All right. So, a really interesting article came out the other day from The Guardian, and it's titled "Who Needs Film Critics When Studios Can Be Sure Influencers Will Praise Their Films." Now, this cover photo, is absolutely atrocious. I mean, you shouldn't be surprised with how all media has been highlighting abominations and um, stuff like that. But yeah, regardless of that, this is a very, very interesting article that I do encourage you all to read. It's very long. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I wanted to highlight a couple paragraphs here. So this here says the internet has paved the way for the devaluation of cinema via streaming platforms. It has also done the same for film criticism. The democratizing effect is undeniable, but so is the cheapening one, literally and figuratively. With so many people writing about cinema online, fees for reviews have fallen to shockingly low levels, and expertise supposedly required of film critics has been forgotten. Knowledge of film history and good writing skills are less and less valued. From typos and poor grammar to evident misunderstandings about what certain word means, the Cambridge Dictionary defines bombastic as forceful and confident in a way that is intended to be very powerful and impressive, but may not have much real meaning or effect, which would mean that Barbie is pompous rather than remarkable. In superficial readings of complex films, the quality of film writing has dwindled. It is hard to recommend people read more criticism when it so often makes for a tedious or actively infuriating experience. The low quality, mass availability, and low interest has in turn hurt publications and encourages editors to pay their writers ever less, and the vicious cycle continues. Recently, a fellow critic tweeted their review of a film newly released in US theaters, but rather than letting their words speak for themselves, they also attached a clip from that film. A clip they had illegally recorded off the online screener, which the studio had provided them. The tweet has since been taken down. They did so to encourage people to see the film because they said no one was going to read my review anyway, regardless of how well I think it's written. When I asked why bother writing a review at all, their answer was brutal and simple: for $50. If the critics themselves perceive their work as worthless and pointless and fall into the marketing strategies to draw people towards films that they love, what place does film criticism hold in today's culture? This is really interesting because, for the last half decade, 5-6 years, I've been adamant about calling out critics, because to me, and this does fall on them, there has been a perception for quite a while that film critics are paid for good reviews. Let's put it that way. Yes, you'll have those critics. You'll have the certain critics who will skirt the line of a negative review and a positive review. And normally a negative review will happen, and this does happen to directors or writers or actors that they don't particularly like. It's hard pressed to find bad reviews on a Steven Spielberg or a Christopher Nolan movie. Sure, you'll have those ones that are, hey, this movie tries to do this and tries to do this, but it ends up falling flat. But then you'll find a review on Zack Snyder, and this is the biggest piece of dog crap ever. Like that's how movie critics have been over the last 15 years or so. So there was a perception, there was this idea, this thought that critics were not in touch with what the fans liked and what they want to see and how they want to see it. And I don't disagree with that. And what happened because of that, and I've been part of this. I mean, I've been doing podcasting and YouTubing in some form or fashion for the better part of 7-8 years, because this started within the last 10 years. This film review type of influencer on YouTube in podcast form, that started to blow up because of the way critics have reviewed. It's no surprise that happened with how the internet is, with how quickly it has changed, how big YouTube has gotten, how big podcast has gotten. This all came about because of the way that people just do not and did not trust critics. And it's done for free. Like, think about that for a second. I jump on here and I don't have a big following, but I can sit here and I can spout for 55, 60 minutes about a film I really love. I can go on Twitter and spout about a film I really love. On Twitter, I have a decent following, and most of my tweets, they don't get a crap ton, but you're talking about impressions, 10,000 impressions easy from a tweet. On YouTube, between YouTube podcast and Rumble, I'll probably get, another 150 to 200 impressions possibly. But you take a look at that, you see that, and the studio didn't have to pay me a dime. I was going to go see that movie regardless of what they did. I was going to most likely enjoy that movie, and I was going to talk about it. Granted, that does fall on the other side as well. There very well could be people who badmouth and talk bad about a movie. But the thing is, the studios know when a movie's going to be bad. They do. They know when a movie's going to be bad. And when they do that, not even the critics get a chance to see it early. But if you notice, studios have been starting to do these influencer previews for movies. They've been inviting influencers to the premieres. They are starting to see the value in influencers as opposed to film critics. And even a normal marketing campaign is different now. There's a TikToker, Straw Hat Goofy. He's a pretty good TikToker. I enjoy some of his content. He loves to talk about, he's very passionate about things. I remember seeing a TikTok from him not long ago about how he was able to quit his day job because he's finally getting to do what he loves. And that's talking about movies and reviewing movies and talking about pop culture on a daily basis on TikTok. But who's paying him for that? Not the studios. No. He's getting paid from TikTok, from ads, from different things. So you figure this promotion, this marketing from studios is nearly completely free. When it comes to critics, they usually have to wine and dine them. They have to wine and dine the critics on a constant basis for all of their movies. So it does cost them money then. I think there is a good discussion here. Personally, I do agree that critics have lost sense of what's important to the fan. And a lot of times they sway the opposite direction of the fans. And that's not all the time, but their opinions sway the opposite direction of the fans. And I get that at one time, film critics should be very knowledgeable, and they still should be very knowledgeable about film. They should understand how film is done, how it works, how writing is done, all of that. And they should be. If you're a writer, if you're a journalist, you should have decent writing skills. And I get that. But when it comes down to it, if you cannot connect with those reading your articles or watching your videos, if what you put on Rotten Tomatoes angers people, no matter what, whether there's influencers or not, nobody's going to read your articles or watch your videos. So while, yes, the influencers have blown up quite a bit over the last few years, it does fall in the laps of the critics. It's not on the studios. The studios are doing what they need to do to promote their film the best way possible. So I don't put that on the studios. I put it on the critics. They've lost touch with the audience. They're so adamant about being, I guess, more intelligent than their audience, that they can sometimes forget that their audience just wants to know, is it a good movie or a bad movie? Good or bad? Let me know. They don't need a full 3-page article on why you don't think it's a good movie. They want to see somebody sitting there on YouTube for 5 minutes talking about the movie, what they liked, what they didn't like, and whether you should go see it or not. Again, yes, that falls on because of the TikTok movement and everything going so fast. We just kind of talked about that, with The Witcher. Things are fast moving. People want fast things, but if your content is good, and this is a big thing, this is something you learn when you're YouTubing. If your content is good, people are going to stick around and watch it. They always say, start off with 5-6 minute videos. See if you can keep people's attention for 5 or 6 minutes. If you do, bump it up to 10 minutes. If you do, bump it up to 15 and go from there. But you find what works for you. If 6 minutes always works for you, you stick with 6 minutes. You can try higher, lower, whatever you want to do, but whatever works for you is what you want to do. But it's not always what works for you. It's what works for you getting the retention of the audience. And critics just have lost that. Rotten Tomatoes is a big part of that. Rotten Tomatoes, all of those types of review sites, Metacritic, where critics could go on and put their reviews all in one place. I've really, really heard it. Especially and I hate not ranking, but giving movies or projects a rating, between 1 and 100 or 1 and 10. Like, no. Because a movie could be 65% and I could have loved the movie. It's just not as good as other movies that I've seen. And that's one way of looking at it. However, if I watch a movie, I'll watch it and say, okay, out of 1 to 100, this movie was a 60. It was all right. Wasn't terrible. Is it as good as Man of Steel? No, but they're two completely different films. Man of Steel to me is a 95 to 98. That's a great movie. But then I wouldn't compare those two movies together. But that's what people do. When they see numbers, they're automatically going to compare. Oh, look, Barbie got a 96 and The Flash got a 64. Obviously, Barbie's the better movie. Well, they're two completely different type of movies. You can't compare the two. Go watch The Flash, go watch Barbie and see which one you like the most. Or just like them for what they are. It's that simple. I want to know your thoughts. I want to know what you guys have to think and have to say about this, because it is an interesting, very interesting topic to discuss. It's very, very interesting.